Hello. Now, our lesson today is on formal and informal English in grammar, and this is part 2. Now, question 1, what is formal English? Question 2, why do we use formal English? And question 3, how can we define or describe formal English? I explained a little bit about formal and informal English in part 1, and now I'm going to give you more explanation in part 2. So let's look at the first question. Now this is a very short explanation of formal English. Formal English is the use of formal, meaningful, correct, and complete sentences, words, punctuation, pronunciation, and spelling. So when we speak about formal English, we mean the words must be complete, must be correct, the sentences must be complete and correct, and they must have meaning, and we also mean punctuation, spelling, and pronunciation. Formal English is a type of meaningful and correct English, which we use in formal situations. So formal English is a type of meaningful and correct English, which we use in formal situation. Most of the time, formal English is like learning another kind of English, another type of English. So which situations, in which situations do we use formal English? We use formal English in these situations, and these are just examples. Speaking to a bank manager in a bank, speaking to a judge in a court, speaking to a caseworker in home office, or in the home office if you want, speaking to a lecturer at a college or a teacher at a school, speaking to an interviewer in a job interview, speaking to people we don't know in any situation, such as discussions, ceremonies, conferences, etc. So formal English, basically when you speak to people you don't know, people who are strangers, you use formal English. And this English is different from the informal English or the spoken English, and it is different in many ways. When we use formal English, we have to choose meaningful and correct English, such as clear and correct pronunciation or intonation. So when we speak formal English, our pronunciation must be clear and correct. Our intonation means our voice. Is it going up? Is it going down? Again, our voice must be clear and everything must be correct. Meaningful and correct grammar. So formal English must have meaning. We speak or we write. Why do we speak or write? Because we want to communicate, and this communication must have meaning. And also formal English must have correct grammar. And by grammar I mean the words and sentences. Any words, even conjunctions, must be formal, and all the words and sentences must be formal. By words I mean verbs, formal nouns, formal pronouns, adjectives, adverbs, conjunctions, determinants, and prepositions. So 8 parts of speech. These are parts of speech. 8 of them must be formal. Interjections are generally used in informal English. So I said we have 9 parts of speech. 8 of them must be formal, and interjections are informal. They are used in speaking, informal speaking. And this is a little bit difficult now, because I don't mean any noun is formal, and I don't mean any verb is formal, or any pronoun is formal. We have specific verbs. For example, obtain is formal, get is informal. Get is informal, obtain, I get a certificate, is informal, I obtain a certificate is formal. So we have to know which verbs are formal, which nouns are formal, which pronouns are formal, which adjectives are formal, which adverbs are formal, which conjunctions are formal, which determiners are formal, and which prepositions are formal. But interjections are informal. By sentences, I mean simple sentences, compound sentences, complex sentences, and compound complex sentences. In general, in formal English, we use compound or complex sentences. But we can have a simple sentence which is formal. We can have a simple sentence which is formal. So I obtained, for example, a degree from the UK. This is a formal sentence. But most of the time, when you use formal English, you have to use complex or compound sentences. Why do we use formal English? We use formal English for many reasons. Why we use it? To be polite. Could you open the door, please? So could is formal and it is polite. To show the level of our, English. Are we educated? And what is our level of education? So from the way you speak, I can tell if you are educated or not educated. If you are more educated, you use better English. We use formal English to meet the standards in some situations, such as exams. So when you take exams before university or at university or after university, these exams, you must, in these exams, you must speak or write formal English. If you go to a job interview and you want a good job with good money, you need to speak formal English or standard English. In the meetings between teachers, in the court, we have to use formal English. Ceremonies again, or formal parties or celebrations. Again, when you use formal English, you respect people who are older than you, and that's why we use it. Again, in serious situations, if you go to courts, if you attend, maybe some court programs, or you go to court yourself, they use formal English. Funerals, again, like when people die, the language they use is formal. In job interviews, most of the time they use formal English, and also in formal meetings. So we use formal English in many situations, but why do we use it? We use formal English if we want to be polite. We use formal English to show our education, we are educated, or we use formal English in exams, in job interviews, and we use formal English to respect people, and we use formal English in courts or job interviews. How can we define or describe formal English? Formal English is the use of meaningful, correct, relevant, accurate words and sentences. Of course, I will explain more about this in part 3. Meaningful, it means our sentences and words must have meaning. Relevant, it means the question, for example, and answer must match. If I say, where do you live? If you tell me I live in Germany, so that's okay. The question and the answer match. The question is relevant to the answer, and the answer is relevant to the question. There is a match between the question and the answer. But if I say, where do you live? And you say, I like tea. It is correct if you say, I like tea. But it is not relevant. It doesn't match with what do you like. Accurate means specific or exact words. So the words and sentences must be accurate. They must be specific or exact. But I will explain more in part 3. So, meaningful. Gardens like people. This has no meaning. People like gardens. This sentence has meaning. Correct. I live in Budapest is correct. He live in Budapest is not correct. Relevant, what's your name? If you say I live in Cardiff, this is correct, but it's not relevant. It doesn't match. I live in a Cardiff does not match. What's your name? This I live in Cardiff is a different answer for a different question. So I live in Cardiff is not relevant to what's your name. It's not suitable. Relevant means suitable. I got a certificate. This is informal. I obtained the certificate. This is formal English. So this is like the end of the video, and I tried to give you here, so very quickly, if you can see what is formal English. I said formal English means everything must be correct, must be exact, must have meaning. The sentences, the words, pronunciation, punctuation, all these must have, meaning, and they must be correct and must be formal. And this is, like a number of situations in which you use formal English. And again, why do we use formal English? And examples like about clear pronunciation, correct, etc. Watch the video again, and I think maybe when you go to, I gave you some examples in part 1 and this is part 2, but when you go to other parts 3, 4, 5, 6 until maybe I will do at least 20 or 25 videos on formal and informal English, and then you can watch them and you look at the examples. This is how we speak, and this is how we speak informally, and this is how we speak formally, because we have got formal English, formal speaking, and informal speaking. We have got formal writing and informal writing. Anyway, thank you for listening. This is the end of the video. I will put more videos for you, and I hope you learn from them in future. Click on subscribe, as I always say, if you want to watch more videos in future. And thank you for listening.